Alex Morgan. Welcome to the Professional Hypnotherapist podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
And Alex, you're currently living in and working in Athens in Greece.
Yes, it's quite far where I'm from. I'm originally from the US in
Yeah.
California.
All right.
So, um, you know,
Cultural shift.
I have my whole business and everything in my life here. So I plan to be here for a while in Athens, Greece. I love it. I love the sunshine. I kind of follow the sunshine around the world, is what I say.
Wonderful. Now, Alex, you're a master trainer in hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming with the ICBCH, which is, I think it's Richard Nongard's organization.
hmm
And tell us what you specialize in.
Currently, I've been focusing a lot on helping people reduce stress or recover from burnout. So this has been my focus recently. It's not the only thing I've done since I got into hypnosis and NLP. However, this is most of the content and things I create now is based around this, helping people with this.
Okay. And when you say stress and burnout, now we all know that stress, like some stress is necessary for life. And indeed, some anxiety is necessary for life to provide motivation to us. But particularly now, I suppose, in post-COVID, and indeed during COVID, people have experienced enormous levels of stress, which, as you deal with, you mentioned burnout. So tell us what specifically got you into that area of work in the hypnotherapy NLP field.
Um, well, specifically with stress, it's something I used to deal with a lot. I actually deal with hypertension, so that's high blood pressure. And usually, if I get stressed or something, because I'm more in tune with how I'm feeling, I can kind of feel it spike up, let's say. So for me, I've used many different self-hypnosis and different techniques to use this for my own stress. And so I like to just share this type of information with people because, like you were saying, there's all kinds of stress.
Yeah.
And so it just depends on the person specifically what they need help with. Because, like you said, stress, some of it's good. We actually, if we don't ever feel any sort of stress, we probably wouldn't fall asleep. So we at
Yeah.
least need to have this. So yes, stress is good. We're still human. So it's going to happen. It's just a matter of how can we actually deal with that to, live a fulfilling life.
Right. Right. Okay. And for our listeners out there, what are the warning signs that we need to be looking out for?
I would say one of them is a lack of sleep. Definitely, if someone's
Okay.
been having a lack
Yeah.
of sleep for a while, they probably have some sort of chronic stress.
Yeah.
And most people, they think that stress will just kind of creep up on them, or burnout will just creep up on them. However,
Yeah.
it's been probably lingering for many weeks or many months. So I'd say a recent lack of sleep could be one. If someone is getting more irritable around, people at work or with people that they have relationships with that really matter to them, and it's kind of not going so well because of this, I would say that's another big warning sign. Or just any physical symptom that they feel that's their body's kind of off. If they could really tune into that, I think that
Yeah.
that would be helpful, because when that happens to me, it just happened this past weekend, to be honest. I
Yeah.
wasn't feeling 100% with my stomach and things like this. So I just said, hey, enough's enough. I'm going to lay down. I'm going to rest. And after about 3 hours, I started to feel better. So we need to know when it's time to relax and deal with these types of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm getting from you is that it's important to listen to your body and listen to what you're experiencing.
Yes.
But oftentimes, Alex, uh, you know, people, they experience this built up emotion, this stress, almost like the pressure cooker, if you want to call it, of anxiety or whatever. And they don't know what to do. So what would you suggest?
I mean, if someone is having anxiety or stress, the first thing that I think is important is to recognize what's going on in their body. Because if they can actually recognize that early, like I said, I had, problem with my stomach, and then right
Hmm.
away I was like, hey, that's enough. Then it won't kind of snowball and spiral out of control. However, if people don't do that and they don't catch it early, and instead it's lingering, I think that there's, some different self-hypnosis things that they could do. Of course, since this is a hypnosis podcast, so there's plenty of ways to relax and create different sensations. I think most people, they need to understand the difference between something such as stress or tension and relaxation. And you
Yeah,
can do that just by really, let's say, clenching your fist for about 10 seconds. That's going to be like the feeling of stress in your body. And then when you
yeah,
let go and you slowly your hand, that's like the soothing sensations of relaxation.
mm,
So we need to learn how to create different sensations in our body, because I think a lot of people, they get used to stress. They run a strategy in their mind of, oh, I'm stressed, I'm stressed. So why not have a different way to physically change this that they can do?
yeah,
So one thing that I do, it's called autogenic training.
yeah.
And I actually have a free PDF that all the listeners can get. That's 5 different ways that you
Yeah,
can let go of stress in 2 minutes per less per day. And it tells you
wonderful.
the exact instructions to do that. And
Mhm.
all they're doing is creating different sensations in the body. They're
Right.
just producing different sensations.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm getting from you is that basically we are initiating the control within ourselves rather than oftentimes, our mind just runs away with ourselves. It just gallops ahead of us. Now, we'll get back to more of that later. You are, as we mentioned previously, living and working in Athens, Greece. Um, and you do a lot of training, I believe, from Greece. I presume, do you speak Greek?
I'm learning.
Oh,
I can understand it a lot better than I actually speak it. It's probably more of a limiting belief I should deal with, but I can understand it a lot, and I'll reply with what I know, or I'll just reply in
yeah.
English sometimes.
Kalispera.
Yeah, Cali right now would be like Calo Messimeri, which
Yeah,
is like right
during the
after
day, of course.
lunchtime. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. And tell us, so what type of training do you do specifically? So that
Um,
anyone out there who is listening and watching this, if they feel that they or believe that you could help them, well, they know exactly where to go.
Yeah. So they would go to my website. It's athensnlp.com, or they can send me an email, alex at
Yeah.
athensnlp.com. Essentially, I train people to either become a hypnosis practitioner or a NLP practitioner, or they can do both. And we also teach the method of timeline therapy. So that's used for getting rid of uh,
Yeah.
major negative emotions, as well as limiting beliefs. However, if someone really wants to, become a hypnotist, the training's great for that. I
Mm,
personally went to these trainings when I had stress and anxiety and things in my life, and I wanted to fix myself because I was
mm,
thinking, hey, there's got to be something out there that can help me. So I always say people should come to the training for themselves first, and then once they get all the nice tools and everything, then they can kind of share them with the world.
mhm. Because I do believe that, anyone studying the mind, specifically in terms of, the hypnotherapeutic aspect and the hypnosis aspect of mind and motivation, yeah, their whole perspective is opened up. They have a different perspective on the world. And indeed, talking about perspectives, in your opinion, how important are perspectives?
Well, they're really important. I mean, if you see, let's take stress, for example. If
Ah,
something happens, maybe something happens to someone and they're totally stressed, yet they're telling me, hey, I have this project and it's, due in a week, but they're stressing about it that whole week. And let's say they tell me, and I'm like, well, I would just get started on it slowly, slowly, prepare and finish. Maybe I wouldn't get stressed. So our perspective on anything could really change how we, view our reality, the whole world around us. So it's, I
yeah,
mean, it's really what changes everything, I think, and hypnosis or training can definitely do that for a student or a client.
yeah, yeah. And what type of clients or do you work with, or maybe perhaps you mentioned you do training in hypnosis and NLP. Do you work with any businesses in terms of what using NLP for business?
Yeah, NLP for business, mostly the communication models of it. So how they can have really efficient conversations at work that, make their save time and make them more productive so they can make more money. So I would say this is one use or in sales, of course. You
Yeah.
can always use different language models or different notice different things in creating rapport or the person's physiology to create that connection. So you
Mhm.
can get more sales as well. This is something that I do focus on too, to be honest.
Excellent. Yeah. So, for example, business owner out there, how specifically would NLP, can you give me an example of how neuro-linguistic programming could help them? If it's maybe specifically with regard to communicating or communication.
Okay. So I mean, if a business owner comes to me and they have, a problem of communication uh, in the business, chances are, if they're the business owner, uh, they're probably part of this problem.
Okay.
So, so we need to kind of loosen up their perspective, kind of how you brought up earlier. They need to loosen up their perspective on
Yeah.
everything, and first have them understand that they need to take responsibility for whatever problem is going on in their business. Because if they don't take responsibility, it's going to be hard to get through to them on everything else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the first thing we need to do. And then we need to work with them and give them all the, different communication tools and make sure that they're satisfied. And then I would usually probably go out to the, make sure to please them, and then go out to the team and teach them the things as well. But I'd probably work on some limiting beliefs and stuff as well within a business, so everyone can get rid of certain limiting beliefs and get on the same page.
Mhm. Mhm. Language is so important, and the words that we use are so important. And to what extent, in your opinion, can we become entrapped by our language?
Well, in hypnosis and NLP, we say it the way you want it.
Mm.
So the most common example I would say is probably a lot of people get entrapped with using the negatives, so things like don't or can't
Yeah, yeah.
and things like this, when the unconscious mind isn't actually registering these words. So if someone says don't fall
Mhm.
or don't expect this, they're actually telling themselves to fall or expect
Okay.
this, because the unconscious mind doesn't pick up on it. So I would say this, if they can change it to a more, have a positive spin, reframe it a bit, I
Yeah.
think this will kind of start to have their world change for them.
Sort of to be more outcome oriented. Exactly, exactly.
Yes,
In other words, what you want to happen as opposed to what you don't want to happen, you
correct. I
know?
think this is probably the one of the easiest ways that people get kind of entrapped in their
Mm.
language and thinking, is thinking like this. And it's a
Okay.
simple
Can you give me an
change.
example of that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, if someone's saying that if someone's telling me to do something and they say, hey, don't you know, don't drive the car like this,
Yeah.
for example, I'm immediately thinking, well, I'm going to drive the car like they told me. So then I have to go in, and then I have to take a whole extra step, like, hey, how do I actually want to drive the car or turn the car, whatever it is? And then
Yeah.
I could do it. But it takes a whole extra step knowing I know, only because I know these things. If someone doesn't know these things, then that's how people get trapped in this thinking, because they don't know the way out of it. So that would just be a simple everyday example of someone just giving you instructions while driving or something like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, you are the author of 3 books, and you're currently writing your 4th book. So tell us about that. Tell us about the books that you have published.
It's funny because I never really had like thinking I'm going to be a published author or anything like this. And then once I got into uh, a subject that I enjoyed, I just figured, hey, why not just start writing about it and putting my thoughts on paper? Because everyone has a book or two inside of them if they just want to
Yeah.
put it out there. So the
Yeah.
first book I wrote, it's a guide to how to let go of negative emotions. So that's
Yeah.
the title, How to Let Go of Negative Emotions. So it really goes deep into what the major negative emotions are, and so you
Yeah.
can recognize them and how you can
What
release
are they?
them. Anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, and certain people will have major emotions depending on, maybe regret or things like
Yeah.
this as well, depending on their
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
So it tells you different things that you can do to let go of negative emotions. That would be my first book. And my second one, it's pro hypnosis scripts. So it just has a lot of hypnosis scripts for different things. So how you can achieve things like confidence, weight loss, stress, lessen stress, stuff like that.
Right.
And
Uh,
my
the,
third
the
one,
Well, can I just cycle back a little bit with regard to the hypnosis scripts?
yeah,
Um, everybody's experience is different, and everybody operates out of let's say, to use an expression, a different paradigm.
mm-hmm.
Um, um, like, to what extent, you know, um, are hypnosis scripts useful, or are they useful for everybody, or do you use the same script for everybody? You know what I'm getting at?
uh, Yeah, me personally, when I work with someone because they have their own paradigm, or another way of putting it too is every kind of phrase or word or picture they have, it's all like a metaphor, a story, their own
Yeah.
story. So
Yeah.
I usually just start off with a blank piece of paper and write down all the keywords and phrases that they're
Yeah.
using, because when I use those later for them, it's really good. They're going to be like, wow, that really makes the change for me. And you could see that, on their face, of course, when we're watching them. I think scripts, especially when, let's say, first starting out, it helps you get ideas. It helps you get creative. I would never, let's say, read one word for word, because you want to keep in mind the client. However, I think
Yeah.
for someone who's just starting out, it gives them a good base and a good guideline to kind of know how to structure things and how to, when to use certain things or different visualizations or metaphors or whatever it is.
Okay.
It gives them sort of like a baseline and a structure to use.
Mm-hmm. And because everybody applies a different meaning to different words, and that's something that I think is important, that we as therapists, hypnotherapists specifically, that we are aware that not all scripts are suitable for every client.
Correct. Because let's say I'm working with someone and I say,
Yeah.
hey, like, how will you know, when you achieved your goal or whatever
Yeah.
it is? The phrase that they're going to use is going to be different from the phrase I'm going to be using, different from the phrase you're going to be using. So of course, if we know what questions to ask and things like this, we can extract the information.
Yeah.
However, if we have say a script where you can kind of plug and play with different things, you could then use some little pattern from a script, then also put in their words to really freshen up things for them, because that's what they're paying us for,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everybody's experience is different, and everybody has different needs and wants, and it's probably the role of the therapist to, meet and match the client where they're at and to bring them or take them to where they want to go. What would you say about that?
That's a very good point, because the client, essentially what we're doing is connecting them to the resources that they have inside themselves to actually solve their problem. So if I was the client, my resources may be much different from a client that I'm working with. So we need to, kind of shake up how they view the world right now, enough to where it opens them up so they can really go inside and find, like, I already have this. I know how to do it. And then
Yeah,
once they start making
yeah,
those unconscious connections, everything gets
yes,
easier.
yeah. I love the expression "shake them up" because
Yeah.
oftentimes, we become very stuck. The stuckness, and this is almost as if it's like a solid block. And you need to break open that to shatter that. To go back to beliefs. To shatter
Yeah.
that belief they may have. And shake it up in such a way that, well, for momentarily they almost feel as if they don't know where they're at. But then the pieces just come back together in a new and a much more enhancing way.
Yeah. And then they may even be like have a little confusion because they haven't necessarily learned
Yeah,
something like this before. They haven't heard something we said
yeah,
before.
yeah,
And the good thing about confusion is once they're at confusion, that's usually right after is when they have a breakthrough, or they're going to learn something that's very insightful for them. And the great thing
yeah,
about hypnosis, they may learn something, let's say today, right now, as we're recording this.
yeah,
However, they'll be able to use it next week, next month,
yeah.
next year, as long as it's useful for them.
That's wonderful. And go back to the books now. The next book, the third book you have written is.
The third one is the transformative power of suggestion. So
Okay.
this one, it's actually going to
Interesting
be,
title.
yeah, this one's going to be part of a new series I'm writing. So it's going to be the transformative power of different things. This one was suggestion. So this one is all about how we can create suggestions. So even if someone's not a hypnotist, they could read
Mm.
this book, and it's a complete guide how they could create very successful language patterns that can change the thinking of themselves and
Yeah.
others. So they'll have ways to influence and persuade others in a way that's beneficial for them and the other person. So that's what this one's all about.
And of course, we all know about the power of advertising, particularly
Yes.
TV advertising, and radio advertising. And, to what extent, in your opinion, Alex, are we being manipulated, as it were?
Well, I would say we could be manipulated as much as we allow it to happen. So
Uh,
actually, if you read the book and you understood some of the language patterns, you would know what these advertisements are doing on TV or social media, and you would probably be able to sniff them out a bit and
yeah,
recognize what
yeah.
they're doing, and you'd probably be less and less manipulated. So.
Yeah, I often think that, there are many, what would I call it, reputable charities out there, particularly when you hear the charities, maybe for some who advertised, maybe they were saying that there was a famine somewhere, and then you hear the expression, if you believe that children shouldn't suffer, this, and they're tapping into, your beliefs and your empathy. And it's
Mhm.
very, very powerful. Now, by all means, I'm saying, by all means, support these charities. I'm just giving an example or clarifying what I'm getting at here. What's your take on
Yeah.
that?
Well, they'll say that, and then they'll say something. They'll only need $1 per day or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's almost like in NLP we have the reframing and sleight of mouth. It's almost like you're then
yeah,
reframing into the person's values to guilt them a
yeah,
little bit, to get
uh-huh,
them to be, oh yeah, I
yeah,
feel so bad. I might as well do this. So I
yeah.
think they're doing a bit of this, whether or not it's, ethical or not, of course, would be why you would, give money or not. So
Right.
that's why
Yeah.
people, when they give money, they like to give money and also things that they believe in, because
Mm.
like you said,
Yes.
beliefs. So I think that's
Yes.
important to consider.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, your fourth book is in the making. Tell us about that.
This one's going to be the transformative power of NLP. So it'll be the second book in the series. I'm writing it now. I have, I think, like 130 something pages. So I'll
Yeah.
probably finish writing it soon, and it'll be released, I think, like early 2024. I just like to give myself time to get
Yeah.
things set how I want
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But this one will be great for anyone who has no idea what NLP is. I go through some of the history and the practice of modeling. So when we find someone who does something excellent, we want to be able to install that in ourselves so we can do it excellent too. So I go
Can you
into
clarify?
that.
Yeah. Can you clarify that, if I give my interruption, with regard to modeling, so that just to sort of maybe we'd slow that down and maybe just give us an example of modeling, or what do you mean by modeling?
Okay. So modeling is essentially taking behavior that someone does in a really excellent way, and we
Mm.
want to be able to understand how that they do it. We don't need to know so much what they do. We want to understand how they do it in their head,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
beliefs they have about it, what they value when they're doing this thing. How do they get feedback? So then, if we were to do this, we need to know, like, well, how do we get feedback? What should we believe? And then we can empower ourselves with all of these
Mm.
things. So I go into a little bit about modeling,
Yeah.
because let's say I want to learn how to, start a podcast, for example. Well, I'm going to go to someone that I think has a really excellent podcast, and I can find out how it is that they do what they do. And then I would follow the same steps that they told me. I would believe the same things about podcasting that they do, that I could, let's say, have a successful podcast or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then I could do it. Or if I wanted to get really good at hypnosis, I would go to someone who I think is excellent at this and have them
Yeah.
teach me what to do. So the whole purpose of modeling too is to find out how someone does it. So then you could also teach others, hey, I found something
Yeah.
really great. Let me show
Yeah.
you how to do this too. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
sharing knowledge with the world is what's awesome about it.
Mm. It's like, it's the structure of what they do. It's not necessarily the content within it, but the structure. And you build, it's like building any house or a building, where you build the frame, and then you embellish upon that, if that's the correct word.
Yeah, we want to, yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it, the structure, because we're finding out like their strategy, which is
Yeah.
essentially like what's going on in their head when they're
Yeah.
doing this thing. Because
Yeah.
if you knew, like, hey, how to start a podcast, okay, probably get a camera, get a microphone, like everyone could find this information. But someone who's really good at it, like how are they actually, doing it, making it so successful? That's the real knowledge, the
Yeah.
wisdom that we want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's important. Now, tell me something, Alex, about yourself that not many people know.
Hmm. Not many people know. Well, I'm left-handed for one. Everyone knows that, but that's a
Okay.
rare thing. I
Yeah.
was uh I was a real strict vegetarian for about 3 years as well.
Oh,
So
what happened?
I moved to Greece, and if anyone's ever seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, when he was a vegetarian too, so I can easily relate to this. And he goes to the house, we're like, okay, well, you can still eat chicken, or you can still eat this, right? So I had to kind of learn and adapt, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't eat all meat, but I eat things to kind of blend in and make it
Uh-huh.
easy for everyone, let's say.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Good. Thank you for that. I just like to throw the spanner in the works, you know.
Yeah.
Now, okay, the world of hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and neuro-linguistic programming. Um, if somebody's, somebody out there didn't know anything about these fields and they have a particular issue, say, for example, if we come back to stress and burnout, or maybe even sleep issues, or even depression. So, how can hypnotherapy and hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming, how can it help me if I need to sleep better, maybe, or to change something that I've been battling with for many years?
Mm. Yeah, so I think actually another thing that many people don't know is I've almost been sober now for 10 years. So that's something I like to hang my hat on a
Excellent.
bit.
Congratulations.
I just thought of that. I was like, I should have said that. Uh, the way it really, I think hypnosis can really help is depending on the type of hypnosis. Some people progress to cause, some don't. So we could find
Okay.
out the cause, like what is the cause of this issue, and then release that. And that often removes all the emotions, negative
Okay.
emotions that you have
Yeah.
with that. Or we could more focus on how specifically are you not doing something correctly in your mind that's giving you the results that we
Yeah.
don't want. And so we figure out a way, we work together by asking some questions, doing different sessions, different techniques of
Yeah.
how can we give you a new strategy so you can get the results that you actually want. So I
Okay.
would
You
say
mentioned strategy. Yeah. Tell me now, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, what is a strategy?
a strategy is it's essentially a series of different steps that we're going
Uh-huh.
to do inside of our head that leads to a specific and consistent result. So someone who might not be sleeping well, maybe
Mm.
they get in the bed and they're immediately uncomfortable and they toss and turn. Then they start telling themselves like, well, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. So that self-talk is part of their strategy, and that's probably why they're not getting the results. However, let's say someone gets in bed and thinks like, hey, this is the most comfortable bed that I've ever slept in. Obviously, this is a very simple example. And then they have positive self-talk about, you know, maybe having that conditioned response of right when they hit the pillow, it's relaxing
Yeah.
for them. And they tell themselves, hey, I'm going to have a great night's sleep. So this would be just a few steps of a strategy that someone could change to get better sleep. Of course, a lot more would go into this than saying a few things, but that's just an example of a
Mm.
strategy.
What I'm getting from you, Alex, is there's a process for everything.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
everything that we do.
yeah, there's a process in it. So we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Would that be correct to say?
Yes, and I think that's a very good point because the end, of course, we want to be able to actually exit the strategy so we know, hey, this is done or this is complete. Because if we
Yeah.
have a beginning, then we get to the middle, and then we keep looping back and not being able to exit it, well, then that could actually lead to the problems you mentioned, like stress or lack of sleep or depression, burnout, whatever it is. Because if we can't exit the strategy, we're just going to be ruminating on those same thoughts and steps, and we're not going to actually get anywhere. So that's a very
Yeah.
important point, that it needs to
Yeah.
have an end. We need to be able to exit to achieve what we want.
Yeah. And sometimes I like to think of it in terms of, if you have in the States they have guns, we don't have them here in Ireland. Uh, if you take the firing pin out of a gun and you pull the trigger, what happens?
Well,
Nothing.
it's not going to, yeah, it's not going to,
Yeah.
nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. So I suppose that's what we're doing in terms of therapy. We're either taking the firing pin out or replacing with something much more, that acceptable, and the outcome is different. But thanks very much for that. Now, what motivated you to write the series of books on the transformative power, specifically, for example, of NLP?
I just like to, I enjoy writing, to be honest. I get in like a nice, kind of like into a nice state of flow. And I just love to share information with the world. Books, it's a very cheap way to learn a lot of things. I'm reading constantly. So it kind of involves like my passion of reading and writing and also sharing information that I'm passionate. And as I'm writing, I'm like, oh, wow, I can put it this way. It's kind of like a one-time show. Every time you do a training or a podcast, you might say something different than you do next time. Yeah. So I always find myself kind of learning new things as well. And I just want to share that with everyone else, and also show people that writing a book is it's not a huge task like a lot of people think. It's actually easier than many would think. So I kind of like to put that belief out into the world as well.
Okay. In the world of NLP, who are your favorite authors?
I have a lot of the older books. Milton Erickson, even though he's not necessarily, let's say, the one who wrote the book, they come from interviews and things.
Yeah, they modeled him, as we say.
Yeah, they modeled him. So Patterns, the NLP 1 and 2, I have it behind me over there. It depends, but a lot of those, like the classics, are the ones that I like. And Richard Nongard, of course, you mentioned, I've read, he has a lot of good books. I've read probably 20 of them if I had to guess how many. So I would say he's one of my favorites as far as now.
Right. And we touched on it earlier, timeline therapy. Tell us about that. I think was it Tad James, I think, has written the definitive book on that.
Yeah, Tad James, who unfortunately is no longer with us. Yes. Yeah, so he was curious. Tad James, he was a fantastic NLP trainer, has the Tad James company. But he was curious about how people actually like store emotions in the body and how those can relate to time. So how our unconscious mind, because it's the domain of our emotions, it releases emotions. And then usually what people do is they shove them back down. They're like, I'm not ready to deal with this yet. So he was really interested in, if this is happening, how can we actually get rid of these negative emotions? It doesn't mean we'll never feel them again. However, when they come up in the future, we'll have a different story in our mind about these. So I'd say that's kind of like the biggest picture of timeline therapy without going into too many details.
No, but it is a powerful intervention.
I use it I use it all the time with clients. It's very powerful.
Yeah. And is there anything else now at this juncture that you'd like to, get across to our listeners? Because I always say to, people coming on the podcast, don't leave here without saying what you want to say. So what do you want to say? What's your final parting, comments or words of wisdom for our listeners of yours?
I really appreciate you having me on, and I've said a lot of what I wanted to say. I don't really rehearse too many things in my head. I kind of just go with the flow. However, one of the biggest things for me recently that I think would be really valuable for people is they need to just find things that they enjoy doing. So for example, if you didn't enjoy making this podcast, then why would you want to keep doing it? Because in my business, I was creating content that I didn't necessarily enjoy doing. So I started finding I can write books, or I can do this. So within whatever it is you do, find something that you truly enjoy doing. And over time, because you enjoy doing it, your results will be consistent, and you'll bring people in who are also happy to share the knowledge or success with you. That's how you usually find the clients, I think, because there's nothing like stopping you.
Yeah. And as you said, find something that you enjoy doing. And the other side of that is if you enjoy doing something, you're usually very good at it. And when you're very good at it, you're happy. You're at your happiest.
Yeah, you'll feel good about it. And that's, I always say, one of the biggest benefits of hypnosis or just doing what you enjoy is essentially feeling good. So who
Yeah.
wouldn't want to feel good as much as possible?
Yeah.
We don't have
Yeah.
to, pain can help us.
Yeah.
However, why not have a fair amount of pleasure in
Absolutely.
our reality?
Absolutely. Great. Now, Alex, how can our listeners contact you?
They can go to my website, www.athensnlp.com. So just the city Athens and then NLP.
Uh-huh.
They can shoot me an email, alex@athensnlp.com, or they can also find me on Instagram. I'm pretty active there. My username there is @Alex Morgan Hypnosis. So I would say those are probably the easiest way to find me and get in touch with me. And I love talking about this stuff. So even if it's
Yeah.
to chat or anything,
Uh-huh.
definitely reach out.
Absolutely. And it's no harm having a chat. If somebody wants to, talk about something, they can,
Yeah.
reach out to you, and I'm sure you'll get back to them as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think the thing is too, a lot in let's say in the hypnosis and coaching world, the messages that people send us, they maybe never told this to someone else before, that they might have a problem or something that they want to
Yeah.
work on. So I think what you said of, just the fact that we actually reply and show compassion, and, maybe we don't end up working with them, or maybe we do. It's a huge step for that person to reach out. So I encourage anyone to, please reach out to whoever you want, you look up to, or whoever you want help from. Because most of us are willing to show compassion when we truly like to help people. So I think that's a
Great.
big point as well.
Excellent. So, Alex Morgan, international master hypnotherapist and master NLP trainer. Thank you so much for being with me today on the Professional Hypnotherapist podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Had a lot of fun.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.